Hello, and welcome to Middle-earth Vision. So I was drawing Gandalf for the next episode, and everything was fine until I realised his beard was too dark, and without thinking, I used a white Posca pen to lighten it, but it made a grey mess. Perhaps he's unhappy without his long flowing moustache. I always like to think that each drawing has a spirit or soul, and this was Gandalf's way of telling me. That's the risk of putting pen to paper. Once you've made a mistake, you can't undo it as you can digitally. I'll have another look to see if I can rectify him in a future episode, or I may start again. Anyway, I've decided to bring another character to life. Frodo Baggins. Frodo Baggins. I sometimes feel he gets a bad rap from fans, and I think part of the reason for this is how he's portrayed in Peter Jackson's film adaptation of Lord of the Rings. At times, he comes across as helpless, and while that may not be the right word, it's understandable why some viewers find this portrayal frustrating. Even my daughter finds this version of Frodo irritating, and it's not because of Elijah Wood's portrayal. He does a stellar job. Rather, in my opinion, it is because Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens and Peter Jackson's writing fails to do justice to Frodo's true strength and character. But that's just my opinion. One scene that illustrates this is when Frodo and his companions are being chased by the ring-wraiths on their way to the ford. In the book, Frodo bravely stands up to the ring-wraiths, despite being wounded by a Morgul blade. At the ford of Bruennon, atop Glorfindel's horse, he proclaims the name of Elbereth and defies the shadow, saying, "You shall have neither the ring nor me." This moment is so powerful and showcases Frodo's bravery and strength of character. I bloody love that. However, in the film this scene is changed. Arwen, a character portrayed as more capable than Frodo, takes over and saves him. In the book, it is an elf lord called Glorfindel who aids Frodo by letting him ride his horse to safety to Rivendell after he's chased by the Black Riders. This portrayal diminishes Frodo's agency and self-determination and portrays him as weak and in need of rescue. I mean, to be fair, in the film he does appear to be in a worse state than in the book, so it does make sense for Arwen to take control. Incidentally, this passage from the book is depicted brilliantly in Ralph Bakshi's animated version and sticks more closely to the passage in the book. I'm a bit of a fanboy of the animated film, even though it's universally panned. You should check out Bakshi's previous film, Wizards. I love that psychedelically inclined animation from the 70s. Anyhow, back to Frodo Baggins. I've noticed that some fans tend to marginalise Frodo in his own story. Sam seems to get all of the attention, but without Sam by Frodo's side, through thick and thin, their quest would have failed. In the book, The Letters of J.R.R. Tolkien, Tolkien stated in Letter 93 to Christopher Tolkien, dated 24th of December 1944, "Sam is the most closely drawn character, the successor of Bilbo of the first book, the genuine Hobbit. Frodo is not so interesting, because he has to be high-minded, and has, as it were, a vocation. The book will probably end up with Sam. Frodo will naturally become too ennobled and rarefied by the achievement of the great quest, and will pass west with all the great figures." Tolkien also states that Frodo isn't meant to be a repeat of Bilbo. While his introduction may share similarities with Bilbo, he's actually a character study of a hobbit who's been shattered by the weight of fear and horror. He's broken down and ultimately transformed into something entirely new. None of the hobbits emerge from their experiences in the same pure Shire fashion they started with. It's impossible for them to do so. While it's true that Gollum inadvertently destroyed the ring, Frodo's role as the ring bearer was crucial. Frodo's personality isn't flashy, and he remains self-contained in his struggles. Perhaps that's why he can seem a little constrained compared to the comical stylings of Merry and Pippin. However, his single-mindedness to complete the task at hand is what truly defines his character. These are just observations, but I have a deep admiration for Frodo's bravery and the ultimate sacrifice he made to save all of Middle-earth at the expense of himself. Frodo was born on September the 22nd in the year 2968 of the Third Age of Middle-earth. Frodo was the only child of Drogo Baggins and Primula Brandybuck. His parents tragically died in a boating accident on the Brandywine River when he was only 12 years old, leaving him orphaned and alone. Frodo's life was changed when his cousin, Bilbo Baggins, took him in and raised him as his own. Bilbo was a wealthy and eccentric hobbit who had become famous for his adventure recounted in The Hobbit. Bilbo and Frodo developed a strong bond, and Bilbo affectionately called him nephew. The two hobbits lived together in Bag End, a luxurious hobbit hole located in the village of Hobbiton. Bag End was comfortable and cosy, and with round doors and windows, lush gardens and a beautiful view of the countryside, Frodo enjoyed a peaceful life with Bilbo. But his world was turned upside down when Bilbo disappeared, leaving behind his magic ring, the One Ring. I'm trying to depict Frodo as more childlike. Well, I always envisioned hobbits to look childlike, but with adult features, more fairy and unworldly. Undoubtedly human-like, but if you met one in real life, they would look like an offshoot of a human. Human but unworldly, strange but undoubtedly friendly-looking. The average lifespan of a hobbit was about 100 years. Tolkien states, "I picture a fairly human figure, not a kind of fairy rabbit, as some of my British reviewers seem to fancy, fat in the stomach, shortish in leg, a round, jovial face, ears only slightly pointed, and elvish, hair short and curling, and brown. The feet from the ankles down are covered with brown, hairy fur that is extremely small. Clothing, green velvet breeches, red or yellow waistcoat, brown or green jacket, gold or brass buttons, a dark green hood, and cloak belonging to a dwarf." In letter 168 to a reader called Richard Jeffrey, I love that when Tolkien was alive he would reply to so-called fan letters about an explanation and origin of several names and meanings in Middle-earth. Tolkien writes about the origin of Frodo's name. Frodo is a Germanic name that was originally spelled Froda, F-R-O-D-A, in Old English. The name is derived from the Old English word frode, which means wise by experience. The word frode itself is derived from the Proto-Germanic word fraujaz, which means lord or master. Over time, the meaning of frode evolved to denote someone wise, learned, or experienced, particularly in the matters of practical wisdom. The name Frodo is particularly associated with the mythology and legends of the Norse and Germanic peoples. In Norse mythology, Frodi was a legendary king who was said to have ruled the Golden Age, a time of peace, prosperity and plenty. According to legend, Frodo possessed a magical millstone that could grind out an endless supply of grain, as well as 2 magical cows that provided unlimited quantities of milk. The name Frodo also appeared in the Anglo-Saxon poem Beowulf, where it was used as a kenning or a poetic metaphor for a wise and learned elder. So here I'm kind of sketching out in my mind as to how Frodo looks. Like I said, hobbits seem childlike, almost comical in the way they look, and that is what I'm trying to ascertain here. I'm trying to stick to how Tolkien described them, even going so far to how Tolkien illustrated Bilbo and the Hobbit, although Tolkien didn't seem completely satisfied with his depictions. In letter 27 to the Houghton Mifflin Company, Tolkien's American publishers, they seem to have asked him to supply drawings of hobbits for use in some future edition of The Hobbit. Tolkien states, "I am afraid if you will need drawings of hobbits in various attitudes, I must leave it in the hands of someone who can draw. My own pictures are an unsafe guide, e.g. the picture of Mr. Baggins in chapter 4 and 12. The very ill-drawn one in chapter 19 is a better guide than these in general impressions." As an aside, I think Tolkien's illustrations are amazing. I just think he hadn't the time or the inclination to write and illustrate his own books, as he was a working professor at Oxford. Perhaps he never found the time, but in his imaginings, Tolkien described himself hobbit-like. He states, "I am in fact a hobbit, in all but size. I like gardens, trees, and unmechanized farmlands. I smoke a pipe and like good plain food, unrefrigerated. I like, and even dare to wear in these dull days, ornamental waistcoats. I am fond of mushrooms, out of a field. Be careful there, sir. Have a very simple sense of humour, which even my appreciative critics find tiresome. I go to bed late and get up late, when possible, and I do not travel much. Oh, to be a hobbit. Well, a hobbit that doesn't go on great adventures. Your normal, bog-standard hobbit would be nice." I'd like to get more in depth with the philosophical implications of Frodo, which I'll discuss in the next video when I start to ink him from pencil. But now I'd like to talk about the hero's journey. It's a popular narrative structure that has been used in countless myths, stories and films. It is a pattern that describes the path of the hero as they undergo a transformational journey, facing challenges and overcoming obstacles in the way. The hero's journey was first described by Joseph Campbell, a scholar of mythology who studied stories from cultures all over around the world. He identified a common pattern in these stories, which he called the monomyth. This pattern consists of 3 main parts: departure, initiation, and return. In the departure phase, the hero is called to an adventure, often by a mentor figure. The hero may initially refuse the call, but eventually decides to embark on the journey. They leave their familiar world behind and enter into the unknown. The hero's journey can be seen as a metaphor for the human experience of personal growth and transformation. It involves leaving behind the familiar and comfortable aspects of our lives and facing the unknown, encountering challenges and obstacles along the way, and ultimately returning home transformed by the experience. Frodo's hero's journey is the idea of ethical responsibility. Frodo is entrusted with the task of destroying the Ring of Power, which carries immense power and the potential for great harm. His decision to take on this responsibility and face the challenges that come with it reflects a strong sense of ethical duty and responsibility. Frodo's hero's journey can be seen as a metaphor for the human struggle for meaning and purpose. Frodo's quest to destroy the Ring of Power is not just about saving Middle-earth from destruction, it is also about finding a sense of purpose and meaning in life. His journey forces him to confront his deepest fears and desires, and ultimately helps him to find a sense of purpose and fulfillment in the world. The story of Frodo and the hero's journey is a rich and multifaceted metaphor for the human experience of personal growth and transformation. It touches on themes of ethical responsibility, community and friendship, and the search for meaning and purpose in life. By exploring these themes, we can gain a deeper understanding of our own journeys and challenges we face along the way. So yeah, I think he's looking pretty good. Incidentally, if anyone's interested in Joseph Campbell's hero's journey thesis and thoughts, there's quite a few interviews with him about it on YouTube. He's a proper interesting man, and has written a fair few books about the subject as well. I think George Lucas was inspired by Joseph Campbell when he was writing Star Wars. In fact, that and Lord of the Rings, definitely have the same hero's journey tropes. So, proper interesting. I think Frodo's looking pretty good. I'm sorry that the pencil towards the end went off screen, and you couldn't see his neck and shoulders properly when I was sketching away. I think the angle is a bit weird. I think in the future I'd like to do more of a bird's eye view of me drawing, but I'll sort that out perhaps for the next video. I need to get something, a telescopic camera stand which is tall enough to go above my head, but it's something I'll sort out. But there you go. I'm pretty happy. He looks childlike with adult features. Here he is. I'm pretty pleased. So see you in the next episode when I start to ink him. Goodbye for now, and I hope you have a very lovely rest of your day, or perhaps evening. Brilliant. Goodbye.